Dubai Live 2023. I had the pleasure and privilege of interviewing a very close family friend of ours, Rachel Godfrey. Now, Rachel is a strategic high performance coach for female entrepreneurs. Now, whilst female entrepreneurs are very focused and disciplined and diligent with their business, many of them struggle with their time, family, fitness, and health. Rachel's company, Chase Life, help female entrepreneurs bring structure and order to every area of their life, ending up with them being better entrepreneurs. Enjoy this video. It was a very enlightening and inspiring conversation. Here's Rachel.
Well, not too big a trip for you, Abu Dhabi.
Oh, a couple of minutes down the road.
A couple of minutes down the road. So, strategic performance coach. But I'm going to go back a few steps because I know you as an athletic fox. All right?
I think most people know me as Rachel Guy. And
wow, Rachel Guy. Yeah, foxy guy. you know. But I want to go back a little bit because you're a bit of an OG. You know, the online coaching space. I would say that for me, back in the early days of my Poliquin days, which we've both been a part of, you really were at the forefront, the start of the online coaching game. So I'm just going to go back a touch before that as well, but just to give people a proper introduction, you're training as a physiotherapist, am I right?
I am.
So talk us through your entry into the industry, because this is an 18-year career so far, right? So, you know, one of the things I wanted to do with this whole event is bring people here with experience, bring people here with time and skin in the game through multiple different, not necessarily career changes or industry changes, but different niches, different markets. You've grown as a person. But 18 years ago, prior to that, physiotherapist, just give us an intro into the journey that got you into the fitness industry, please.
Well, I think this will show my age. I've just turned 40.
Woohoo!
So I actually started lifting weights when I was 13 years old. And that was very rare back then. You know, fitness wasn't trendy when I started lifting. I am a tomboy. I played rugby at university, mixed martial arts, don't judge a book by its cover. But I think the reason I got into weight training in the first place was because I'm hypermobile, and I actually dislocated my shoulder when I was 13, and I went to a surgeon. I had multi-directional instability in both of my shoulders, and he took one look at me and he said, "You're like a floppy rag doll. You need to start lifting." And so, being the obedient student that I am, I went to the gym. And I basically just started copying what the guys were doing in the gym. I did, at one stage, do curls in a squat rack. I've since learned you don't do that. So that's basically when my fitness career actually started, was in the gym. I loved it. I loved how strong I became physically, mentally, the resilience that it built. And you know, then you got to choose your GCSEs, and you get to the stage where you go and see these careers advisors. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And they said, well, you know, you're interested in science, maybe you could be a doctor or you could be a physio. And because I'd had physio on my ankles and my shoulder and whatnot, I thought, well, I'll go and be a physio then. And the rest, as they say, is history. I went to university in Birmingham, had an amazing time, loved it there. But physio and being employed was not the path for me. I am clinically unemployable.
Damn, you've taken my question.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to actually ask it. You've moved straight into it. You said here, and I've seen this, you've written this, you're clinically unemployable. I like that. Right? And I think in this room, a lot of people might agree that they're all the same, because I think I was too. What is that? Talk me through that.
For me, being clinically unemployable is, I would never say that I was depressed. I was certainly fucking miserable. Being told that I had to be in work at 8:30 in the morning. I was not allowed to leave until 4:30 in the afternoon. Working in ICU or critical care as a junior physio, seeing the most fucking horrendous things I have ever seen, and being paid £16,500 per annum before tax for the privilege. And I thought, fuck this shit. I'm not fucking living my life that way. 16 grand, I'm gonna fucking earn 16 grand in a day. There's no way on earth I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. Now, prior to that, I had been actually working at River Island from the age of 14. So I knew what hard work brought. You know, you can work hard and, you know, these are the results that you get. So I started work at River Island, and I loved it. And back then I was probably paid about £4 an hour. But it was it was what that brought you. You know, I worked my way up to managing menswear on a Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon at, 17 years old. And you realize that hard work brings this. That's where I learned part of my people management skills. You know, you're working with people who are a lot older than you. And so you have to be very good at what you do, and you have to learn to communicate. So part of this whole thing about being clinically unemployable, I employ people now who also don't fit the mold of being an employee. And so one of the things that David and I do is we encourage people to take ownership of their own role within the company.
You're moving stages from physiotherapy to your own thing. There was because obviously I know you from the coaching days. I know you from living in Australia. From the management roles into the personal training and then starting to get your wings and travel. That journey, how did that unfold? Because you moved into the PT world, right? Initially.
Yeah, so what happened was when I was studying at university, I remember being in a library and I was like, I used to hate the majority of physio curriculum. So I really enjoyed, obviously, orthopedics, the musculoskeletal side of things. I actually also really enjoyed respiratory, so working in critical care. I really hated neurology, et cetera, and my mind would wander, I would procrastinate, and I would find myself actually seeking more, okay, so how do people get muscular? How do I get stronger? And then that led me down the path of Paul Chek. Many people in this room won't know who the hell Paul Chek is. I know. Hands up, who knows Paul Chek?
Yes.
That shows your age,
Good
guys.
on you guys.
So back in the day, Paul Chek, Charles Poliquin, they were pretty much the only leaders in the industry. They were doing some amazing things. And I think, to this day, a lot of what Chek and Poliquin were talking, they were so far ahead of their game. They got so ridiculed by the science industry, which honestly, the science industry is well behind. Yes, we should listen to science, but so much of science hasn't caught up with what actually brings results. And so that's where I learned. I fell into the Czech stuff. For me, it was a really nice transition between the clinical side of being a physio and then obviously, being a personal trainer. It was really bridging the gap between end-stage rehab and strength conditioning, because a lot of my work experience, I had been in rugby clubs. I'm Welsh, so rugby, it's in the bones, and so I had a lot of friends who were strength conditioning coaches or physios within rugby teams, so I'd spent a lot of my time there. And I'd seen there's this massive grey area between the boys who would come out of physio, and they were not ready to start S&C, and back then S&C was just about, lifting weights and making sure that there wasn't so much of an element on making sure that their players don't get injured. It was more of, well, let's just get these players strong. And as a result, a lot of them would end up back in the physio room because there was poor lifting technique and things going on. So there was this gray area in between. So I thought, that took my interest. And that's really how I got into strength conditioning in the first place, is taking that sort of middle ground. And then obviously I found Charles Poliquin. And I look back, 15 years ago, you and I would have been sat in a room like this.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm so grateful for those days, because admittedly, one of my first conferences that I went to of Charles's was in Las Vegas. It was a disaster for me in Vegas.
Out.
Me and you, when we were like 25, were perhaps not as disciplined as we are now. Work hard, play hard. But, I think one of the things, like you guys being in this room, and by the way, like for 100 of you, David and I were talking about this, for 100 of you or more, to fly over from the UK, to be here in Dubai, massive testament to what you do and what, your team of Coaching Concierge does. Like, amazing testament. And it's so inspiring to be in a room like this, because not only does it make me remember how we kind of came through the industry, but, to be here now on the other side and like just you guys, like the barrier is so low for success right now. There are hundreds and thousands in a saturated market of trainers, a saturated market of, fitness and health and wellness, whatever it is. The barrier is so low. If you do a good job, you're going to fly. If you're passionate about what you do and you do what you say you're going to do, that personal integrity, if you get up in the morning, you do what you say you're going to do, you will fly.
Athletic Fox.
My baby.
It was. And I really want to make a note of this because, we always knew you for being, would always say back then, she's just jacked in an amazing shape. And it was great. There was a passion for your training. But how influential, before I actually get into Athletic Fox, how influential has your shape and your commitment to be in shape been at the early stage of your career, building respect amongst the female market?
Or just as Rick was saying, actually, my career really started on YouTube unintentionally. I've been in a very male-dominated industry prior to that. I was a head of strength conditioning at a mixed martial arts gym. I was training guys to fight. And so part of what I was doing was really just for fun, It was a case of, well, here's my workouts. And then I would start having ladies comment, well, how do I lift and how do I look like you without getting big and muscular? We're going back sort of 12, 15 years. It wasn't commonplace like it is now. It wasn't trendy for women to lift back then. And that's really where Athletic Fox was born. It's funny because I always said that I was never going to work with women because they were too emotional. And I just didn't, for me, like men were really easy to work with. You tell them what to do and they go and do it. With women, it's a little bit more of an interesting game, which I've since learned to play.
Well, we're going to delve into the female game. Athletic Fox,
Yeah.
One of the first digital, if I remember, training programs for women online. And we're talking, quite a long time ago, considering the online market. Everybody thinks, it's only recent. It's not. Athletic Fox, the blueprint was online, correct?
Correct. So I launched the Athletic Fox Blueprint in December of 2012, the first round of it. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was completely winging it. I remember I had to teach myself I used PayPal. I had to learn how to put a PayPal link together. I had to build a site from scratch using WordPress, and I think I used Wishlist Member, and I just had to wing it. I think one of the things that so many people today expect is just to have a business handed to them on a plate. Like, what you got to remember is you have to work from like the grassroots, ground up, and learn shit along the way. Like, that's part of being an entrepreneur, is that you never want to have this handed to you on a plate. Because honestly, if you were given $1 million business right now, you would have no idea how to run it, and you would run it into the ground. Because it's not about the business, it's who you become in the process. And it's that working, it's in the trenches, it's doing the hard stuff that makes a successful business.
Do you feel that coaches choose the niche, or the niche chooses them based on who they become through their journey?
That one. The niche will choose you based on who you become. So what I will always say is that your clients right now are a reflection of who you are being. And your worst clients are your best clients. I look back and I've had some shockers over the years. And my God, have they been my best clients. I have learned so much from them. In our business now, we don't give refunds. Like, there are hardly any refunds. But when we do give a refund, I would say we probably refund maybe one a year to 18 months. And these are high-ticket programs, and we always do it off our back. And it's usually because the client wasn't a fit coming in. But we learn from that client. What could we have done differently? What was the process during the sales call? Like, what were the red flags? And often we look back, and there were red flags right from the beginning, from somebody's filling in the application form, just their attitude. Like, I know when I've got a fuck yes client, because it's just so aligned. And the other thing is as well, and I think this is really useful, is that look how you operate with your coach. And so when you sign up to, if you want high ticket clients, you got to pay high ticket yourself. And so how do you operate and how do you show up when you're paying for high ticket services? Because when I'm doing it now, David and I have just paid 100 grand for our coach this year. That's a lot of money, $100,000. And he told me the price and I was like, fine, I'm going to wire it to you. And the process is instant. And your best clients do that. They are instant people. They make decisions and they move forward. But if you look, I haven't always been here. There have been times where I've thought, God, I remember back in fact, it was 2012, after I launched the Athletic Fox Blueprint, I thought, shit, I need some help here. I was really struggling with stress and overwhelm. I was a complete perfectionist. And honestly, it was debilitating. And I got to the stage where I thought I needed business help. And so I enrolled in my first 36K mastermind, and I kind of ummed and ahed about it for a while. And I look at that person now, and it's, I needed to become somebody else in order for the business to grow. Because honestly, your business will only grow as fast as you can grow. And you get to a certain level, and then there's always a next level. There's always a next level. Honestly, this stuff is like constantly evolving, and that's the best thing about personal development. It is the best thing about business and the best thing about being an entrepreneur, just like bodybuilding. And I use this all the time. Why do I love bodybuilding so much? Is because the game never ends. Because if the game ends, game over. Like, it's boring. And so thank God the game doesn't end. Thank God there's always a new level. There's always a new level of income, new level of emotional freedom, new level of, relationship intimacy, new level of relationships with your children. You learn more about yourself. Like, the game never ends.
Faraz talked yesterday about being very intentional. You've just talked about, which I relate to so much, creating the version of you is the most important thing along your journey of entrepreneurship with personal development. What are the intentional things that you have done to create a better Rachel?
Well, I think, you start with your physique, right? You alluded to this earlier, like how important is your physique in your career and in your business? They're irrefutable. If you're in the fitness industry, you've got to be in shape. But does that mean you need to be walking around absolutely jacked with a raging six-pack? No, it doesn't, but you've got to be in shape. You've got to be in better shape than most people in your gym. And I think today, when we've got a fitness culture online, which is great, and we should have this fitness culture, but when we've got that toxic fitness culture of everyone is in a gym with a tripod, and it's almost a bit tarnished, but you've got to be in shape. Everyone wants to compete nowadays. I'm sorry, but back in our day, unless you had the best rig in the gym, you wouldn't even consider getting on stage. And so I really think that as a trainer, yes, you should be in shape. I actually said to David last night, I was really surprised to come in here, and of course, because everybody here is a reflection of you, like everyone's in really good shape, like really good shape. And not just really good shape, like all you guys, you look so healthy. And I think that's also a really big missing element of the fitness industry is, Naz talked yesterday about being like healthy and longevity. Maybe it's just a thing because, we're over 40 now, but, like when you see somebody and they just exude this health, it's in their skin, it's in the way that they hold themselves. Like that level of health, I think is so infectious. And seriously, I've talked to so many of you, like every single one of you has that. So keep going.
Well, I did my genetic testing recently with Naz. And one of the first things he said to me is, your genetic testing shows me how long you've been healthy, how long you've committed to this. And going back to our days with Charles Poliquin, it was functional medicine. Charles taught the biosignature. Anybody heard of biosignature here? So biosignature was what Charles taught. And what people thought was it was an opportunity to read body fats.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was an introduction to functional medicine. And that's how many years ago, 12, 15 years ago, we were studying functional medicine. So as I said to Marsha yesterday, last night, my wife's here, we're about to have a baby. She's listening to a functional medicine doctor. She's interested in it. That responsibility that we now have to then bring that forward to our child and then the people around. That's why we brought somebody here. And the fact that, health and how it's not just about how the six-pack and the physique. You have been intentional in terms of how you look, which is number one. But I also know from speaking to you and David, as long as I've known you, this is something that you both have. It draws Marsha and I to you as a couple and friends, how much work and how important has it been on you to be emotionally stable?
I mean, it's immeasurable, absolutely immeasurable. And, you know, one of the things that is really important is for you to know your values. So one of the things that I always say to our clients is you need to know who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going in life. Because when you know those three things, everything else is easy and just falls into place. One of the things that Faraz talked about yesterday was he made the conscious choice of, you know, he spent less time with his family. I made the conscious choice, and David made the conscious choice, that when we had Xavier, our son, 5 years ago, we actually put our business into maintenance mode. So we did the opposite. I was prepared to earn less money, and we were just going to maintain until we obviously got to a stage where the children are now a bit older. Our son is 5 and our daughter is 3. But for us and our values, it was really important. I didn't care that I wasn't doing like 100K months whilst I had young children. It was more important to me to be available as a mummy than it was the money. The money will always come. And, you know, I think when you know your values, you can be intentional around that. So it's easier said than done when you have children. You know, I'm very intentional with my time, but at the same time, if my kids need me, everything else gets dropped to the wayside. Is that frustrating sometimes? Yes, it is. Honestly, like, this is something that I struggle with now, is I sometimes tear my hair out with the fact that I've got XYZ planned for the day. If the kids' needs are there, like, everything else just gets dropped. And that is also a choice. You know, I'm lucky enough to be here in the UAE. I have an amazing nanny. But if one of my children is sick, who do they want? They want me. They don't want a nanny. And so, as a result, workday gone.
Your niche now, the clients you work with, I really want to delve into this, because the journey of you and who you've become has put you and David in a position whereby you're attractive to these types of people. What is it about Chase Life, your company now? Firstly, what is Chase Life? What does Chase Life do? And who are the type of clients you work with? And what are the challenges that these particular clients bring to you and David that the last 15, 18 years have equipped you well enough to deal with?
My gosh, there's so many questions in there. So I think the first question is, like, what is Chase Life and what does Chase Life do? And David and I have sort of different roles in a company, but essentially, you know, I inspire women to courageously go after the things that inspire them. Now, whilst we predominantly work with women, David also, we do also work with men, and I think that, on a side note, men's needs are fundamentally really undervalued. I think men need a lot of support in the emotional and personal development space. Women need to be seen and heard. Men need to feel strong and powerful. And this is, you know, a lot of men now, when they go to a therapist, the therapist will sit you there and say, tell me your problems. And for a man, yes, there are times where you need to, you know, offload, you need to feel seen and heard, but you need to have the steps in order to be able to fix that problem yourself. And so we do take also the similar approach with women. Women need to feel seen and heard, but they need the skills in order to be able to help themselves. We talk a lot about extreme ownership. Just as Faraz was talking about yesterday, and I'm pretty sure Spencer mentioned this as well, it's all on your head. As an entrepreneur, it is all on your head. And so what we do at Chase Life now is we help entrepreneurs, we help visionary leaders, executives move forward in life. And so that can take a variety, or like we mentor high performers. So whatever that looks like, you know, for some clients, it's going to be helping them with their body composition and, you know, dealing with binge and emotional eating and addiction and sometimes drugs, alcohol, whatever, you know, addiction it is. That's more David's territory. You know, whereas I will work with clients and we'll have a look at their business. Sometimes it's a case of, you know, what questions are they not asking of themselves and what conversations are they not having? And so this is a huge roadblock, especially in entrepreneurs. Like, we've got this thing in us, like there's this DNA in us, that it's unbelievably fucking frustrating when you go to somebody and ask for help and somebody says to you, oh, just slow down. it's so annoying. Like, we've got this thing in us, and, you know, Joe was up here yesterday as a 26-year-old, like, killing it in his personal training business. And, like, I was like, God, I was like that at 26. But what I will say to you, just also enjoy the ride. Because I didn't enjoy, well, I did enjoy the ride, actually. It was really good fun. But I wish I'd been, like, more present and really enjoyed the hard stuff too.
It's actually something that Joe and I have been speaking about recently, because when you're making a lot of money in the early days, and Rick covered this amazingly well, that there's the difference between chasing the money every single month and losing who you are,
Yes.
or keeping who you are and also loving the money. And I think that's, you know, us moving here has allowed me also to enjoy the journey just as much. So the clients that you're working with, what that you've done throughout your career so far has equipped you the most to deal with these types of clients, male and female?
There's two words: life experience. There is no way on earth I could do what I do now without life experience. And, you know, I was pretty sensible in my 20s, and I had my shit together. Emotionally, I wasn't developed enough. And even if I had had the formal training that I do now, I would still not have been ready. Because with life comes life experience. And so a lot of the clients that we deal with now, we've got one client, for example, at the moment. She's a farmer. Her business turns over 12 million quid a year. She's a young mom of two. She's 120 kilos, huge, like, hormonal clusterfuck, massive back history of trauma, and an amazing entrepreneur. Like, how do you deal with that? And so what we got to look at is, we look at the traits of high performers, and quite a lot of the clients that come to us, they have very similar traits. Things like perfectionism. These are traits, by the way, which a lot of you will struggle with, and I certainly struggled with. I know you have, and like David has. These are traits that in the initial stages of your career will really push you forward. Perfectionism, right? Perfectionism really pushes your career forward. Like, everything is to a high standard, to, frankly, an obsessive standard. I used to obsess over having everything perfect because I wanted my customer experience to be the best that they have ever had. But on the flip side of that, things would take me 10 times longer than they would ordinarily. The second thing is that tasks would take so long, and I would always look for the things that were not good enough. And when you look for stuff that isn't good enough, guess what you find? Stuff that's not good enough. And that has then a negative impact on your self-worth. Being a human doing, so we're here to be human beings, we're here to be and not to do. But when you're a human doing and your self-worth is totally wrapped up in achieving and doing, and I had this intense fear of being seen as lazy. And it would have been my worst nightmare in a male-dominated industry to be exposed as being lazy. Like, that was my thing. And so I worked and worked and worked, and I worked so damn hard, and I outworked everybody else just so that I could prove to myself that I wasn't lazy. And so there are things like that. And then, when we get into the types of clients that we work with, completion addiction would be another one. Having a list, a to-do list that's as long as however long, and having the incessant need to complete everything on that list. Now, you can't do that. Like, if you've got clients who are like raising millions and millions and millions of dollars over a course of months, you've got to learn how to park that, because problem solving doesn't occur in the moment. Problem solving occurs, just as Rick said, like, he creates space to think. Like, how often do you create space to think? Like, I go out for a walk 5 o'clock every morning, and I just, that's my time to think and to detox my brain and to just, listen to things. Or sometimes I just walk in silence. Like, how often do we do that? And if you want to perform at a high level and you want to build a high performance brain, then you have to be able to park something. And so many of our clients are so obsessed with that completion. It becomes addictive because we want to feel that tick and then just to put it off to one side.
What do you do? A lot of the coaches in here, they'll deal with somebody saying, I'm a perfectionist, and it just kills them. You've got this client that's heavily overweight, perfectionist. Like, if you're a true perfectionist, to me, your life would reflect in every area. What do you do with somebody? Like, what are some of the tactical things that you may do or say or help somebody with who says they're a perfectionist? Because at the end of the day, if you're an entrepreneur, like, it's not something necessarily you want to just get rid of because it's helped them to a certain degree. What are your thoughts on how we would help somebody with perfectionism?
So I used to wear perfectionism as a badge of honor, and I used to say, right, and I'm sure you would too, and it's just that I'm just a perfectionist. Honestly, it's the antithesis of high standards. If you're a perfectionist, there's no standard, there's no mark where you can go, I've done it. I've done a really good job. There is a clear difference between high standards and perfectionism. And perfection, it doesn't exist. There are high standards. It's good enough.
Like having a goal that is, I just want to be better.
Exactly. Where is that? It means nothing. And so you know what a high standard is. My high standards of today are probably not as good as my standards are going to be next month when I review something. And so this is the thing, you've been talking about with your team, where you've gone through every single thing in your program, and now it's going to be even better, to an even higher standard, without doing perfectionism. Because if you do perfectionism over this, it's just going to consume your brain. So we need to park it. It's good enough. It's getting amazing results. And you know what? In a year's time, 6 months to a year's time, we're going to review it and we're going to make it better, because right now you can't make it even better because you don't have the knowledge of the future. So many people are wanting the benefit of foresight to make decisions right now. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. The answer to everything in the future is, I don't know. So yes, we need to plan. We need to be very good with strategic planning. Planning for the shit to hit the fan, whatever, but not over planning. And that's a problem.
Do we make that, I suppose with perfectionism, it's a great way of looking at it. If it's a true high standard, it's measurable, but perfectionism is not measurable.
That's a really good way of putting it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to, if someone says I'm a perfectionist, okay, give me the standard. It has to be. If it's graphic design, give me the minimum standard that something has to be. Because if it's never good enough, you're always going to look at it and it never is good enough. So it's making it measurable. Is that right?
And the thing is then that it's this negative feedback loop into your self-worth. People do not, entrepreneurs, we do not resonate with self-worth. Honestly, if somebody had told me, 10, 12 years ago, you've got low self-worth, I would have said, fuck off, mate. Fucking low self-worth. I'm fucking confident. I was not confident. I was not confident in who I was. I didn't know who I was, what I stood for, where I'm going in life. And yeah, that comes with age and it comes with time, but it also comes with doing the things that you said you will do. And this translates to clients. Clients will say things like, I'm going to lose 10 kilos. Okay, well, why? Go on and go off and lose 10 kilos. I'm going to go and do my 10,000 steps every day, but you're not doing that. And so, one of the strategies that we would use with, our client, it's just a complex case. Typical case for us. Complex case. Less is more. Getting people to actually do the things that they said that they will do and strip everything back so we have the absolute non-negotiables. And I think this is something that's so important. If you're training entrepreneurs and you're training C-suite execs, you got to understand, these people are busy beyond your wildest imagination. When I launched Athletic Fox, I was so stressed and so overwhelmed. I just had myself to fend for. I had no kids. I had no husband. I was off partying in Las Vegas and Marbella and doing all these things, and I was stressed out of my brain. Why? Because it's all in here. It's not the external stuff. It's not how many clients you have. It's not that people, your employees are not working. It's none of that stuff. It's all the patterns of thought and behavior that you're running in your head 24/7. So if you want to work at a different level, yourself, your business, your clients, you have to learn to understand what makes people tick, and you have to manage your own emotions and your own state. And thank God I learned to do that before I had children, because my God, kids push you to another level.
How do we manage our emotional state?
Ask David. Kidding.
Okay. That would be, we'll go to the beach and then David's like, why did you say that? David, do you want to put your hand up? How do we manage our emotional state? But seriously, you've got a lot of female clients now. Obviously David's got male clients. But in the room here, how many of you find quite high achieving clients do struggle to either stick to the plan or use time as an excuse why they can't get things done? Cool. Okay, us as well. I'll put a hand up for you. My hand's raised for you guys. So let's just break two of those down. High achieving entrepreneurial women.
Yes.
Time.
Time.
What do you guys do strategically to either show somebody that they have time or get them to see the value of the time they have with the goal that they say that they want?
Okay, so there are a couple of things that we do, and there are some things that as a trainer that you can do. So what we would do, when somebody says to me, I don't have time, that's bullshit. Like, everyone has time. Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. It's about being intentional with your time. The number of people who I speak to, who are even high-flying C-suite execs, and they'll say, I don't have time. And then I'll just kind of like leave the comment go, and then I'll say something like, oh my God, did you see that thing that whatever the latest gossip is? And they go, yes, did you see what she was wearing? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, so you have got time. You're watching the shit that you don't need to be watching. And you say that you don't have time. So I am quite sneaky like that. Like, I do remember things
Is anyone going to use that one? Did you see that thing on Instagram yesterday? Yes. Yeah. Did you see all the other stuff she was talking about?
Yeah. And listen, like, I've been caught on Instagram. Okay, so I did see this funny video the other day. I was in a TikTok, I don't do TikTok, but I was in this Instagram scroll, and there was these two Chinese guys, and they had squeaky thing on their feet, and they were both like blindfolded or something, and they had to like whack each other, and they were hiding in this room.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
It was so funny.
Hilarious.
If you haven't seen this video, like, we'll share
it. Was it with the duck quack?
There was a quack.
I sent it to Marsh. It was the craziest thing.
It was so funny. It was so funny. But
I haven't got any time to run the business, by the way.
But you got to be intentional with your time on that. So, there are things that I do. Like, when I look at clients' diary, and I will literally say to them, give me access to your diary. What are we doing in here? So first of all, we look at their behaviors. What are their patterns of thought running 24/7? So we have to address all of that first. We have to address the people pleasing, the perfectionism, the lack of boundaries, the over-analyzing, the worrying about what other people think. We have to address that first. Obviously, that's what we do at Chase Life. Then we have to look at actually how they're planning their day. We look at their annual plan. We break that down into quarterlies. We break that down into weeklies, and then into the daily to-do list. The daily to-do list has no more than 3 things on at a time. And then after that, I look at, are they actually doing the things that they say they're going to be doing? So a lot of people will be called into meetings. They have no boundaries on, we've had clients who are lawyers and they're in an open plan office. Somebody will come up and say something, they'll be in the middle of a piece of work. They get interrupted by a colleague, et cetera, et cetera. So there are boundaries around that. I've had one client, this would have been back in 2015, had one client who I taught her what we call jam sessions. So jam sessions are basically 45 to 90 minutes of work, and that's solid work time. Like, who here turns off all notifications when they work? Well, probably more than most, right? But if you can do 1 to 5 jam sessions a day of 45 minutes to 90 minutes of solid work time, like, personally, I cannot work for 90 minutes. David can. I cannot sit there and work for 90 minutes. I've got the attention span of a squirrel on speed. I need to work for 40 minutes, and then I need to get out and do something else for 20 minutes. And for me, that's when I go and do my steps. I'll just, walk up and down the neighborhood, whatever it is. But it's giving clients practical tips of things that they can do, and just pointing out to them very clearly that you're wasting time here, you're procrastinating here, you're allowing, you're people-pleasing, you're allowing somebody to come into your personal space here, being ruthless with your time. That's definitely one thing we teach clients.
So, with that, a lot of people in the room right now are not very good at it themselves.
To practice what you preach.
So I think that's a great lesson that you just shared with us here, is that to work with entrepreneurs at that level, you have to be confident enough in your ability to say, the thing we're not going to talk about is your diet. The thing we're going to talk about is your strategic planning. So entrepreneurship strategy is one.
Absolutely. And I think, when when you're working with somebody who has got a lot of pressures from various different people, it's not just a chaotic work environment. They go home and it's hardly an oasis when they go home. A lot of these guys, actually women now as well, children want to be with them. The dog is shit on the floor, like whatever it is. Like it's a stressful environment at home as well. And quite often, you guys will see this as well. So many clients are in an absolutely abysmal state of physical health. That means they are in an abysmal state of emotional health. Their spouse probably hates them, and their children don't know who they are. That is a sorry state of affairs. And guys, we can change that. And how you guys can change it, being on a gym floor or, working with somebody with their training and nutrition, less is more. Yes, get somebody out walking, but, just get them eating 3 proper meals a day based around asking the first question, where's my protein? Because if your client can ask themselves, okay, where's the protein? That means that their food choices are going to be better. Rather than trying to build this perfect meal, okay, just where is the protein? And then on top of that, they can build. So just starting off with the basics of the non-negotiables and the minimal effective dose. And I have been so guilty of this in my career. I'm sure you have too, as have probably a lot of the experienced trainers in the room, trying to impart all of your knowledge onto a client who is physiologically and emotionally overwhelmed and cannot cope. And that's when they have this, fuck this shit moments, I just can't do it. And then you're going to lose the client.
You're essentially taking an entrepreneur and helping them understand that a lot of the strategy they have on a day-to-day basis, the things they do well, is a similar approach that they need to do the things that they can't do well.
Exactly.
You and David, 2 beautiful children, you run your business together. There's a lot of younger coaches in the room here that are currently in relationships, have been in relationships, haven't been able to kind of handle that relationship alongside growth of the business. A lot of people in the room right now are going to see exponential growth over the next 12 months to 2 years within their business. How do you and David manage your relationship, children, being able to train and do the things that you want to do and still be in love and enjoying everything that you do?
You've got to pick the right spouse. I think Professor Galloway said it the best, where he said the most important financial decision of your life is choosing who you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And when I met David, little fairy tale in spandex story, I was living in Australia at the time. I had been there for 10 years. And I came back to London in 2015 via Marbella, having had a very messy week in Marbella. And I was presenting at actually an event similar to this. And I think it was the morning before the event, I thought, I'm going to better dust off the cobwebs and get to the gym. And so I walked into a gym. He's there.
Spandex.
It's a fairy tale in spandex. I was probably in spandex.
You trained in spandex?
David definitely wasn't. And his opening chat-up line was something like, oh, you're Rachel Guy, aren't you? And I thought, yes. And the rest, as they say, is history. And when you know, you know. And I think we didn't date. I flew back to Australia the next day. And within 4 weeks, I had left Australia, packed up my apartment, and I'd moved in with him in London. And so for somebody like me who's been very calculated and very intentional with all of my decisions throughout my career and throughout my personal life, that was a gamble, and it luckily paid off.
What are some of the things that you and David do to maintain? I describe them as high-performance relationships because you're growing a business, you're growing a family, you want to stay in shape. How do you manage everything as a family, keep communicating and be as content as you are together?
And honestly, you have to know yourself. You cannot come into a relationship looking for somebody to complete you. You have to be so complete and so content in yourself so that you can bring your best to the relationship. When David and I met, first of all, we've both had crazy relationships in the past, but also very good relationships, very strong, solid relationships. We both knew what we wanted. And I think, I came into the relationship I want him. I don't need him. He wants me, I hope. He doesn't need me. And so when you have that dynamic of, I want you, but I don't need you, it's a very powerful place to be. And especially when children are involved, because he's honestly, like, he's not my number one. I'm my number one. And then my children come second, and he comes third, and vice versa. And there's a mutual knowing of, I know he's going to be just fine. Like, if we don't talk to each other for a week, he's going to be fine. I mean, I went to Zanzibar 2 weeks ago, and I was helping out with an orphanage, which I want to come on to, by the way, because it was something that Spencer said yesterday. I don't think I phoned David the entire 5 days I was there. We communicated a bit on WhatsApp. Oh, he's fine, he's doing his thing. I'm fine, I'm doing my thing. And you know what? That's such an amazing relationship when you just know you don't have to worry about somebody else. But when it comes to the communication side of things, first of all, we know each other, we know each other's frequency and each other's energy, but there's also no barrier to communication. And when you have children, we don't have conversations. Like, when it's always like some kid is butting in somewhere. And so it's these small, sometimes, I know, like, he will never walk past me in the kitchen without, tapping my ass, right? And that's like a small thing for me that's like, I know he's still there, and that's like how men communicate, right? And I'm also quite,
I slap him.
But, I understand male psychology. And so also that makes it easier. David will often say that he married a husband. So maybe that helps as well. But I think, when you understand the way that each other communicates, women need to feel seen and heard. And there are many times where I've come back from a trip and I need to give him a meta report. I need to tell him every single detail about my trip. And so I say to him, I pick my time and I say, are you ready for my meta report? And he'll say, no, not now, because he's doing something. I can't just expect him to listen to me. If he's in the middle of a jam session and he's in his office and he's in his flow and he's doing his thing, and I come in and I'm like, oh, honey, I got to tell you something. I got to tell you, what my neighbor was wearing. It's disrespectful for somebody's time. And so when you're evolved and you're at peace within yourself, not only do you have this aura of peace within yourself, you respect other people's time. And so I'm desperate to tell him something, but I have to wait. And the meta report can wait. And then he'll come out and he'll say, okay, I'm ready for your meta report now. And I'm like, okay, blah, 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 as we do. And then I'm like, oh, I feel better now. And he'll go, oh, that's very nice.
I think what you just said is...
Thanks for making me feel seen and heard.
I think what you've just said, and I love this, is you value him and he values you.
100%. Yep.
And I think this is something that I touch on a lot, and which is why this weekend and the way that we run our business coaching program is we're with people for 6 months. It's not just business tactics. It's also about how do you conduct yourself with your partner. What is what are you doing to build your character? What are you doing to build your emotional level of stability? What are you doing to give your clients the best experience? The tactics will get you the clients. But if you're unhappy at home in your relationship, if you're unhappy that your clients are leaving left, right, and center, that's the business stuff that people don't think. But part of running your business is running a relationship, right?
Oh, absolutely. And if you're in a relationship right now that's good, but your eyes are looking elsewhere, or you haven't got a clear vision of this person in your future, we've all been in relationships where we should have left before we did. And honestly, life is short. And, there was a lot of pressure from my parents, Rachel, when you're going to meet somebody. I was in a 5-year relationship prior to meeting David, and, he was an amazing guy on every level. And, on paper, he was technically perfect. He would have been a great dad. He would have been a great husband. But he wasn't the one. And I didn't have the balls to leave. And I was sat in a room like this. I remember being in a room like this, and it would have been in 2014, so the year before I met David, with my then mentor, Kerwin Ray. And we had to write like this piece on our spouse. And I was like writing this, and I was like, and it was like, you write the name of your spouse and, where are you going in the future? And I remember just sitting there fucking bawling, because I was like, I know what I have to do. And if you know what you've got to do and you don't do it, it's going to hold you back in every single area of your life. And you need to pull that pin no matter how hard it is, because trust me, when I did eventually end things because I'd met David, it wasn't easy to do. David coached me through how to end my relationship with my ex.
Strategic, aren't you? I'm going to show you how to get rid.
Yeah, but we also look at it from his perspective, right?
I didn't know that. Good job. I'm thinking of launching a program. Can I teach you through something how to get rid of your partner?
But the thing is that it was a difficult situation, and then from his perspective, he's got somebody, me, who he's thinking, I want to spend the rest of my life with this woman, but she's now going back to Australia to end things with her 5-year partner, who has basically also been deployed because he was Russian. So he'd been deployed, he'd been coming back from the military. What's that connection going to be like? So there's so much going through his head, and I think that shows how both of us were ready and both of us were so evolved emotionally. There was no jealousy. There's no jealousy in mine and David's relationship. There's no space to be jealous in a good relationship. And, I remember coming to see you at M10 and, I was telling you that I'd met David and, you said something towards the effect of, I know that at some point is going to happen for me. And I said, I know it will too. And then we have Marsh. Yeah. And so, I think if you are in a relationship right now that hasn't got legs, cut it sooner rather than later. Because unless it's right, and I'm not saying don't work on a relationship, but you have to be all in on fixing the relationship because it's a fuck yes or it's a no. And if you haven't read Mark Manson's piece, Fuck Yes or No, go and read it. Just Google Mark Manson, fuck yes or no, and it will tell you a lot about your relationship with yourself and your relationship with your spouse. Because I can tell you now, your relationship with your spouse will determine the success of your life and of your business.
If I go into my phone right now and I scroll back under Rachel Guy, not Godfrey, UAE number, one of the first WhatsApps you sent me was, read this. And it was a link to that article. And I've quoted that. You've heard me say it, many of you guys, fuck yes or fuck no. And it's something that I've lived by since you showed me that. So I appreciate you for that. And it has. And it's entrepreneurship. Faraz said yesterday, he wouldn't have said it like that, but it's a yes. Either complements your journey or it complicates. But something you also touched on, which I think is important. If you don't end a relationship, yes, you're holding yourself back. But you're also not giving that other person the opportunity to live their perfect life because you're holding them back. And it's a two-way thing. It's not you making the decision that's selfish for you. It's a selfish decision because it's not setting them free. If you're not right, be free. Right?
Absolutely. And, it's one thing that, I've said this to David, and I battled with this if, I should have ended it with him sooner. And, David's very, practical with everything. I'm the why person and he's the strategy person. And he's like, chain of events and, perhaps we wouldn't have met when we did, etc. But, it is something that you think about and just let them go. Let them go.
Guys, I know there's going to be a few of you, hopefully plenty of you that will have some questions. We've got about 5 minutes before we're going to change over. Michael, if you can give the mic. Has anybody got a question here to Rachel in the room? Please. Down here at the front.
Hi. You said that a lot of the people that you work with have an abysmal state of health. How do you get them to see the importance of prioritizing that? Because a lot of the people that I've worked with say things like, when I've done this, then I'll do that. When I've got this, then I'll do that. When I've done the thing, or when I've achieved the thing that I want, then I'll focus on me. How do you get them to change that round and prioritize them first?
Well, they're making happiness conditional. If you put happiness in the future, it will always be in the future. And so there's this real dichotomy when it comes to fulfillment and happiness and actually moving forward with life. It's that you have to be accepting of who you are right now, whilst being excited for being on the journey of who you're becoming and what you are achieving. And so an example would be, a fitness example would be, I'm not going to go to the gym until I've lost 20 kilos. And so something as simple as that reframes it in the client's mind of, oh yeah, I mean, well, of course, I mean, you go to the gym to lose weight. Well, technically, we don't go to the gym to lose weight, but you know what I mean. And so sometimes a reframe like that is really useful for clients. And what a lot of people think is that when I earn, when I have a 6-figure salary, when I am, 60 kilos, when I get on top of my my relationship, when I have done this thing, then I will be happy. What you've got to understand is that you do not achieve that thing until you become that person. Who is the person who runs a 7-figure company? Who is the person who manages their condition? Who is that person? How do they act? How do they show up? How do they speak about themselves? How do they manage? Because that's what I alluded to earlier, is like if I gave, somebody who was homeless a 7-figure business to manage and to run, they'd run it into the ground. They wouldn't be the person. And so it's exactly the same of when we're trying to transform somebody's physique or get on top of a health condition. It's like, who is that person? So when I was in Zanzibar, I was with one of my now close friends, actually. She's become a very close friend very quickly. She suffers with psoriasis. So obviously, autoimmune condition, and she's got a few other health issues going on. And we had this conversation. She said, well, once I get on top of this, then I can do that. And I just said to her, Mo, who are you being right now? Like, when the person who manages that condition, what do? They prioritize their health, they do this, but be loving and accepting of who you are right now whilst being on the journey and being excited for who you can become in the process.
I love that. And I think what you just said then is that reframe is a change in their perspective, because they're using the same story, and if you can help change the story, then they have a different way of being able to see it. Another question, guys. Sean down here. Yeah, just Sean, put your hand up, Sean.
Hi, Rachel. I'm interested to know, when you work with entrepreneurs, what kind of boundaries do you set in place from the start with them? Because in my experience, if you don't set those expectations early, they can walk all over you. So how important is it to set those boundaries, and what boundaries do you set in place with them when you start coaching them?
Oh, I mean, it's the biggest thing. You have to hold your doctor frame. So you're the boss, you're the doctor, and you're respectful of their time, and you respect the client, but in return, you also respect yourself, and you have boundaries. Those boundaries are really important. So when we're on a sales call with a client, we have our expectations of how we expect them to show up, how committed we are to their success, but ultimately, there are 3 things that determine the success of a client. Our content and how good our content is, our commitment to the client and our coaching, and then the third thing is the client's commitment to the results themselves. And we can guarantee the first 2 things. We can't guarantee the client's commitment. And we basically say to the client, how committed to your success? We have a conversation around that, and it's often when you have ideal clients, we can say things like, look, listen, we get it, like life is really busy. I'm going to hold you accountable. You okay with me holding you accountable? Because I'm going to call you, and some of the conversations that we're going to have are going to be challenging conversations. You're not going to like some of the things that I'm going to have to say. You okay with that? And a lot of the time they'll say yes, and sometimes you have one that's like, and then you don't make them an offer. But often people are seeking direct feedback. When you're a busy professional, there is nothing worse than time wasting. Time wasting is the antithesis of high performance. And so they will appreciate direct feedback and having uncomfortable conversations. And the way that you would phrase it would be something like, look, I'm so committed to your success, I'm prepared to have conversations, I'm prepared to tell you things that are going to be temporarily uncomfortable. Are you okay with us having conversations like that? And you just basically get the approval of, yep, I'm fine with that. And then you've got permission to basically call them whenever things come up, which they inevitably will.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Welcome.
Guys, look at that. Time's up. Time's up. Rachel, this has been amazing. So grateful for your time. So grateful for you being with us today and leaving your lovely children for a couple of days. Guys, please join me in thanking Rachel.
Thank you so much.